take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
All right, good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome to the show. It is Wednesday, June 11th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world, and I am scrambling here at Rolla J Studios in beautiful Portland, Oregon. We had an internet failure just an hour before showtime. The router was all gunged up and not working, and nothing would load, and so we scrambled to put together a live show. Didn't want to disappoint, wanted to make sure we had plenty of good content for you today. Unfortunately, we won't be visiting with Priscilla Seiben for our news today. I'm so sorry to have to bring that to you. Yeah, didn't have enough time to get the news written and get the videos put together. I had to make a choice. And since the news required the internet, I chose to work on the videos. But I I chatted with Priscilla Seiben just a minute ago, and she'll be back on tomorrow's show. We'll have some fresh news for you. But on today's show, what we're going to do is dedicate it to the Dallas-Fort Worth Texas Regional NORML Conference, the second annual conference that I just returned from last weekend with a fresh new tattoo even. And there's so much that occurred there, so much great video that I got. Well, the video's not great. The audio, we'll work on the audio too. But hey, it's our coverage of that Texas Regional NORML Conference, which today is going to include a speech from the Princess of Pot, Jodie Emery, a great talk that she gave. We also ran into Talia from Mothers Advocating Medical Marijuana for Autism, or MAMA. We ran into her at Froggy's Boathouse, which is this kind of Texas roadhouse party place, has a beach and a volleyball net. Well, not a beach, and just has sand and a volleyball net, and had some live music and great drinks, and fun was had by all. And someone said, you really need to meet this woman. She's a conservative, Christian, Republican woman who's fighting for medical marijuana. I'm like, yeah, I need to talk to Mama. So Talia from Mama, she's one of those people that just oozes positivity. She's just amazing, and I wished I'd had my light with me. We could have gotten a better video of it, but the audio will have to suffice. Her story is pretty phenomenal. Also on the show, in the second hour 2, Toker Talk Radio, I'm going to bring you video from the parents panel at DFWNORML.com, where some of these Texas parents told some pretty heart-wrenching stories about their children's fight with disability, including epilepsy, and how they are struggling to get medical marijuana access for their kids. So that's coming up in hour 2, as well as another look at Froggy's Boathouse on that first night we got there, Friday night. A very cool, amazing party. If you've been to Rolla J Studios, you may have seen the big pot leaf maze poster that we have, or if you've been to various cannabis cups, you may have seen these pot leaf mazes, hand-drawn pot leaf mazes. Well, the artist behind that saw a big volleyball court being unused and full of sand, and someone gave him a shovel. So he made live a maze there, went under the volleyball nets and everything. And we've got footage of him making it and some of the party goers trying to solve it after having drank spirits and imbibed some wonderful herbs. So it's kind of funny, and I hope you'll enjoy that. It's all coming up in hour 2 in Toker Talk Radio. Thanks for this special edition of the Russ Belville Show. Highlights from DFWNORMLCon, the second annual. For more information, make sure you check out Dallas-Fort Worth NORML at DFWNORML.org. And check out one of their big sponsors, Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo in Fort Worth, Texas. We'll be right back with Talia after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio. Tune in, turn on, get highly educated. The Marijuana Business Association, or MJBA, are proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show. It is the mission of the MJBA to establish integrity and legitimacy, create common market standards, provide market intelligence, and develop best ethical business practices for participants in the emerging legal marijuana industry, including commercial hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational marijuana for adults. Learn more about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net. Got a comment, question, complaint, or request for 420radio.org? Visit our contact page at 420radio.org/contact today. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
Here's our video from Froggy's Boathouse on the opening day of the Texas Regional NORML Conference.
Hi everybody, Radical Russ here. We are still at the DFWNORML Convention Conference. I guess it's a conference. And we're at Froggy's at the pre-event. And I met this wonderful woman. Her name is Talia, and she's with Mothers Advocating Medical Marijuana for Autism. Thank you for being here, and thanks for standing up for this.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an easy thing to stand up for because it's truth,
Yes.
and it's our children.
Absolutely. Now, is this something that came from a personal place?
Absolutely. I am a mother with a child who has autism. He's 9 years old. His name is Lance. And as a conservative Republican, this was the last thing I had been thinking about. I'm very focused in on autism, but as reports came out about Dravet syndrome, epilepsy, it kind of sort of got my attention. My son doesn't have seizures, so it's kind of, I am an autism advocate. There's a little bit of blog that I'm involved with, Thinking Mom's Revolution. So people kept tapping me on my shoulder as an advocate about, hey, you really need to look at this. Then reports started coming out of California that kids were gaining focus, they were gaining language, kids were dropping diagnosis, aggression gone, and they had my attention.
Absolutely.
And now I see it as my purpose, as
A calling?
a conservative, a purpose and a calling. I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, and I understand this issue clear as day. And I feel like it is my calling and my purpose to bridge the gap on this issue. And I feel like this is an absolute unifying issue that I'm here at a normal
I know, it's
conference.
amazing.
Earlier I was at the Texas State Republican Convention, and I'm over here now at Texas NORML.
Night and day as
Night
far
and
as
day.
conventions
And
go.
absolutely, and both are my people.
Yes.
Love in both places, and so my life is very exciting right now.
Sounds like it. Now, I remember reporting on this issue. The first mother I can remember was Nico Hester Perez, her
Yes,
son Joey.
absolutely.
Remarkable work that medical marijuana did for him.
Absolutely.
That was a California situation.
Yes.
Lately, we've seen 8 states now in 4 months pass these bills for cannabidiol oil, CBD oil, that is being touted by these politicians as the answer for epilepsy and other childhood syndromes. Can you tell us why that's not the case?
Because so many of the children, each child is individual. Each child needs to be looked at as an individual. We can't just one size fits all cannabidiol for everyone. Some of the kids need varying ratios of THC to CBD. In the case of autism, it's especially important for parents to have that freedom and that right to play with that. Sometimes CBD causes an excitatory response in children of autism. We need to be looking at the gut, serotonin, dopamine levels. Will THC help a little bit if they are a bit hyperactive or having an excitatory response? And that needs to be something that a parent has the freedom to discuss and work with a doctor on. And so it's a health freedom issue. It's a liberty issue. That makes it, for me, a conservative issue.
I couldn't agree more. I'm originally from Idaho and grew up with around conservatives and conservative thought, and always baffled me that conservatives can be so anti-government meddling in accept this issue.
Right.
And I personally believe a lot of it has to do with the stigma of people that use cannabis recreationally. And that maybe these people are thinking that, oh, it's got THC, that's the stoner smoking pot thing, and we don't let kids smoke pot. Explain why that's like so off base.
Well, first of all, I think we need to just talk about the language that we're using.
Yeah.
The propaganda campaign against cannabis has been so remarkably successful. I can't really think of many other propaganda campaigns that have been as successful as that one.
Yes.
And the term that they've used and coined and even put into legislation is medical marijuana.
Right.
All right?
Right.
That is a racist term. That is a term that word is just embodying prejudice and fear. So I like to talk about medicinal cannabis, medicinal cannabinoids, cannabinoid medicine, cannabinoid extracts. When you start using that kind of language, people go, what are you talking about?
Right.
Right? And suddenly, we have an open mind and we can begin to discuss. What we are fighting here, the Goliath here, is simple. Fear. It's all fear. The opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. And so these people who are in opposition, a lot of the arguments are slippery slope, gateway drug, fear-based. And it's founded in propaganda. And they believe this. It's not that they're bad people, it's not that they don't have compassion, it's not that they don't have hearts. It's that if you walked their experience, you would probably be afraid too. Because look at what they've been told, look at what they've been taught, look at the generations, the decades of this. Generation after generation after generation. So it is a little bit of a Goliath, but my Bible says perfect love driveth out fear. And I believe in that. I stand on that. And I know that when I come at them with that expression of love, acknowledging that they do want what's best for Texas families, that they do have a heart for my child, for other children, that they are really, truly speaking out of their own experience and their own truth. When I acknowledge that, there's a willingness to listen. And today, several legislators, I was asking, who are the Tea Partiers? Where's the rocky ground? Who are the guys that are going to say no, no, no? And as I found them and had these conversations, I can tell you right now, I did not get one hard no. What I got a lot of was, I need to do more research. And you know what that means? It's saying I need to get educated. They're acknowledging their own ignorance. I need to do more research. And if they follow through on that, this is a winnable issue. Now, as far as the THC component is concerned, I think for Republicans, we have to go in with cannabidiol, we have to go in with Jodie and epilepsy, and at that point we can say, and by the way, some of these families are going to need to play with it. Can we get plant, but even if we just passed CBD in the Texas legislation for 2015, it would be huge because everybody's saying Texas will be last. But my Bible says the last shall be first, and I stand on that.
It is so refreshing to hear you espousing Christian values as they pertain to sick kids. It seems to me we're supposed to be called a Christian nation, and yet for people to stand by and worry that we can't help a sick kid because we're afraid of someone else using cannabis in a way we don't take for life.
Fear.
I can't believe that.
Fear. And when I look at the Republican Party platform principles, the 10 principles by which they define and guide them in their platform, coming up with the planks, the principles are fantastic. It's about sovereignty, freedom, families living under natural law, founding fathers, God, nature. This is the language that are used in the principles, and that's right in line with what we're talking about. So if we can get them on this issue of epilepsy, cannabidiol, we can start talking about health freedoms, liberties. We can start making that kind of headway and start opening minds. Today, this Republican convention was so exciting. In temporary committee, medicinal marijuana was voted onto the party platform as a plank. Then the opposition came in with testimony and doctors and saying, no, oh my gosh, gateway drug, slippery slope. It got voted down. But what I've come at Republicans against marijuana prohibition and those that are advocating, I've come in and said, listen guys, you got to repackage this message. And when I have these one-on-one conversations, here's what's happening. So even though it got voted out in permanent committee, there's a minority report, and tomorrow on the floor in the assembly, there will be more testimony. And we're on point now. We're on one message. We're going to go in with cannabidiol. We're going to go in with health freedoms. We're going to go in with these are the party principles, and this is why it needs to be on the platform. We need to be in support of these families. Republicans love family, and their values are family values. And families are being forced to move out of state. They're being forced to commit felonies.
Yeah, that's the saddest thing. When these parents get the hope of this bill passing, and then they learn, oh, you can't get it in Iowa. You have to drive to Colorado and become a federal drug trafficker to bring it back. I always think if these people want to be criminals, they do that now.
I had a mom call me today. She lives in California. She got a prescription from a doctor. She lives in Texas. And she's just so in fear of bringing back a non-psychoactive extract. She's in such fear. And it's so sad. She shouldn't have to be afraid to bring something back for her child that's going to help and heal her child.
So right. So now, is this true? Mothers advocating for marijuana for autism? Is it national? Is it Texas-based?
We are Texas-based. We've been getting a lot of inquiries. Lots of states would like us to open other chapters, but I really feel like we have to succeed in Texas in the 2015 legislative session. We've got to stay focused on Texas. Once we've had success in Texas, then we can teach others how to replicate. But I'm not trying to put my cart before my horse and do too much. I really want to stay focused on Texas. If we can do it here, we can do it anywhere.
Oh, that's for sure. So if people want to help in Texas with MAMA, Mothers Advocating Medical Marijuana for Autism, how do they get in touch with you?
Please go to www.texasmama.org, and you can find my email address there. You can find bios. My partner Amy Lou and I, we founded this together. We were at an evangelical Christian Bible Belt church in Westlake, Austin, which is like one of the richest areas in Austin. We love that church. All the moms in our special needs groups are on board with this. The epilepsy groups are on board with this too. We're here. We're saying, hey guys, we're one of you now, you know. And I love this issue because it's so unifying. There's been so much division and so much fear of you and me even talking, you know. And this issue just brings love and compassion and unity and something we can all get on board with, even if we're at extreme opposite ends. And I just see it as such a beautiful thing. God-given endocannabinoid system. God-given plant with cannabinoids in it. My God doesn't make mistakes. I go back to Genesis 1, 29 through 31. God made every herb-bearing seed. And it goes on to say, and he said, behold, it is good. It is good. That is God medicine.
Can I get DK to the stage?
Talia from MAMA, you're doing great work. TexasMama.org. And you are a natural-born lobbyist.
Thank you.
Good luck at the convention.
God bless you, and God bless you all.
That was Talia from MAMA. And again, as I said, a phenomenal woman. She just oozes positivity and love. And one of those people that, you know, she didn't have to tell you she was a Christian. You could just tell, right? Just from her vibe, man. I wish more people who said they were Christians had that kind of vibe. Anyway, we're having this special edition of the Russ Belville Show. We had an internet outage earlier in the day that prevented me from putting together the news headlines and our regular show. So we've got some footage from the DFWNORML conference that we're presenting on today's show. And coming up next after the break, we will have Jodie Emery in our Ladies of Legalization segment, her keynote speech to the Texas Regional NORML Conference. And also want to remind everyone out there that our next event will be at the High Times Cannabis Cup, the Bay Area Cannabis Cup, this year to be held in Santa Rosa, California, just north of the Bay. I'll be traveling down there with Herb Thrasher and Left Wing Larry. Herb Thrasher making his way to his first cup, and we are going to have ourselves a good time. If you can help us out in any way with the finances, the lodging, anything that you, volunteering even for the Cannabis Cup, please let us know by hitting us up through email. You can use our contact form at 420radio.org, or you can email me directly, russ@radicalruss.com. I think we're still looking for a place to stay, so if that's the big one that we're looking for right now. But if you like to help monetarily, you can always become a VIP member of 420radio.org. Just click on the VIP membership button all the way at the top of the page. You can also make just a one-time donation if you don't really want to sign up for the monthly VIP package. Thanks for helping us. Uh-oh. That sound means it's 20 after. It's 4:20 in Colorado. It's 3:20 here in Portland, Oregon. We got to take a break because, well, the union requires it. You know, we have to have a safety meeting. We want to make sure everything is safe here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Jodie Emery after these messages. .420 Radio, the world's voice of marijuana legalization. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420.
Oliver had a brainstem injury. As a result of that, he has a lot of complex medical conditions, including refractory seizures. Medical marijuana is helping so many children just like Oliver. Why can we not get access to that medicine to give my son the same hope and the same chance for life? Senator Skelos, please don't make us wait another year. Allow a vote on the Compassionate Care Act.
Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out lushledlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. In 1929, Pauline Sabin began the women's movement to end alcohol prohibition. 4 years later, the 21st Amendment was passed. Women are crucial to ending adult marijuana prohibition, and we celebrate women's marijuana activism in a segment we call Ladies of Legalization. Here she is, Jodie Emery in Texas.
So, hello, I'm Jodie Emery, and I'm so grateful to be brought down here by the generosity of Dallas-Fort Worth NORML. I don't often get offers to go to events and have it covered. To be honest, I try to get to as many events as I can to speak, but typically my store just covers the cost, and I'm very grateful to have been given the opportunity to come speak to you guys, because I love America. I know it sounds crazy after what they did to Mark, but the American people have always been the greatest support for us. Canadians care and all, but there just aren't as many of them. But truly, the American people are the ones who suffer the most. And I remember from the beginning that I always used to say that, you know, when people would get upset about the U.S. government and everything they do, and the Americans, and it's very generic, they just say Americans. And if you give me 1 second, I am going to clip this. That's a little easier. All right. So people would get upset at the Americans. They felt like the American people were the ones who were continuing this prohibition. They're the one. They must be the right-wing evangelical, Americans who hate drugs, and they're always oppressing free-thinking Canada. There's this mentality of the Americans, but that was a lot, mostly under George W. Bush, to be honest. Canada was held down by America when it came to marijuana policy reform. I'm going to rewind and go back to 20 years ago. Mark Emery was a fellow in Ontario, which is, not west, not furthest east, it's kind of central. He started his business as a bookseller and opened his bookstore on Sundays when it was illegal to do so. And he would say, come and arrest me, come charge me for this. I'm going to open up for business. It's ridiculous, you can't shop on a Sunday. And they would come and they'd tell him he can't do that. He'd give away books for free, and they'd say you can't do that. And he would constantly go to court and fight for liberty and justice and against censorship and against big government. He started newspapers that were the anti-censorship newspapers. He fought to get 2 Live Crew records into Canada. Obscene rap music was illegal in Canada, so Mark went to Detroit in his earliest days when he did cross the border, and got some rap records, took them up to Canada, bought an ad in the newspaper in London, Ontario, saying, I'm selling these illegal rap records, come and get them. And the police were there, they're the first in line, and they did charge him. And in the court, the prosecutor had to stand and read aloud some very obscene lyrics, and it was so ridiculous that that got thrown out, and now Canadians can listen to really nasty rap music. Yay! Thanks, Mark. The point of that is Mark was always fighting against censorship and fighting against big government and using money to do it. Mark was never interested in money for himself. He never amassed personal fortune or even anything at all. His only possessions are comic books at home that I have that I got him for Christmas one year because he has nothing he wants. He knows, though, that government takes your money. In Canada, we are taxed at about 46%. When it comes down to when you buy a product, the taxes and your income tax and everything. Half of your income is taken by the government in Canada. In America, obviously, there's big taxation too, but when the government is taking your money and using it against you, you're powerless. Like, you're barely making it yourself. Everybody struggles to survive. And when your government is forcing you to work to use that revenue to abuse you and oppress you, you need to fight back. And there's one way to fight back, and it's with weapons, but that's obviously not always very good. Although in some cases in America, you get revolution and all that, but when it came to fighting against the government, he knew that the dollar was important, and for a long time the movement was about anti-capitalist, anti-money. The big money people are the enemy. They're the ones against us. Yeah, that's true, but the only way to compete is to have money yourself. So that's why Mark moved to Vancouver in 1994 and started selling bongs and pipes and High Times magazines. Actually, it started with High Times, door to door, with penniless. He was absolutely penniless. He went door to door selling that magazine, and then he opened up a shop and started selling bongs and pipes. Right now in Canada, it's actually technically still illegal to sell a bong or a pipe, but nobody really knows it, and so don't tell them. But it's the truth. And even books and magazines, the High Times law is actually still on the books in most of Canada. It was only appealed and dealt with in Ontario, so High Times is also illegal in Canada. Any literature about marijuana is illegal in Canada. Again, don't tell the cops, because they can come and raid us, and they did. Mark opened up, and it was outrageous what he did. Because in the 80s, all the hemp stores were shut down, all the head shops were shut down, and Mark opened up Hemp BC, BC being British Columbia. And it was a legal resource center. He started publishing the marijuana and hemp newsletter on hemp paper. Very expensive, but he wanted to get that message out there. He got hemp clothes. I know there are a number of activists in America who met Mark in those early days, and there's a lot of interaction and working together about hemp and medical marijuana. Mark started selling seeds because Americans couldn't get seeds. It wasn't that easy. You could maybe go to Amsterdam and smuggle some back, but if you wrote to Amsterdam and said, send seeds to America, they say, you're crazy, you're absolutely nuts. Nobody's going to send marijuana seeds across the U.S. border. That's insane. Americans grow their own, of course, very proudly and very well. I'll say that's true. You guys got it good down here. All over America, there's good bud being grown. But Mark decided that seed sales, as a seller of seeds others grew, he didn't produce his own strains. He was just a wholesaler, a bank, Mark Emery Direct Seed Bank. And he said that when you bought those seeds, he would use the money to end prohibition. He would use the money to fund political parties, ballot initiatives, court cases, and to that end, he started funding a lot of American groups. I mentioned a few earlier, but in 1998, Marijuana Policy Project was going to shut down. They were broke. So they went up, Rob went up and saw Mark, and Mark gave him 3 checks for $5,000, and that got them through. And look what they're doing today. And so Mark did that with a lot of different groups. There was a patient's class action lawsuit against the U.S. federal government in Philadelphia. I think that was the year 98, 99. Mark paid for 30 very sick and disabled people to be flown to go to the hearing, to be put up in the hotels. There's all sorts of little examples. The global marijuana marches around the world started with Dana Beal and others in New York, but Mark really spent tens of thousands of dollars to make posters for people all over the world. And he sent seeds all over the world. And Cannabis Canada magazine grew into cannabis culture because Americans were reading it and learning how to grow. He started Pot TV, the first video website in the world, along with CBC television in Canada. They were launched on the same day. Amazing, the idea that nobody even could watch internet on the internet, but he was doing it. And from 2000 onward, he spent $250,000 on Pot TV, and that was to educate the people. That was grow shows, political shows. Loretta Nall of Alabama, There's so many activists, I can't even recall all their names, and they would help out, and Steve Covey and so many others, and they would contribute and educate, and we also documented the movement. Because what's really important about any cultural movement is to make sure that your history is not eliminated. So Pot TV and Cannabis Culture, High Times, every book, every photo, that stuff is so valuable because it represents our culture. So Mark knew that the marijuana movement needed money. You can't just sit back and be a broke hippie on the beach wanting it to be legalized. And that was with some of the people where he met, and they were mad at him. They said, what are you doing coming to BC? What do you think you could do, wear a big business suit and talk about money and all this? You know, we're left-wing, left coasters. But Mark said, no, money is the only way to save us. And to that end, he raised millions and millions of dollars. So many millions, we can't even keep track of it. I didn't show up until 2004. I was only there for 1 year. I was there for right before the DEA came, and I had nothing to do with it. But it was like really terrible that I only got to see 1 year. But I will tell you, there were lineups of people come to that seed office, and they go, Mark, I've got a conference I want to hold. I need some money. He'd say, how much you need? $500. Here you go. Mark, I'm going to make a movie about ending prohibition. I need some money. How much you need? $5,000. Okay, hold on. I'll get you $5,000 in a second because the seed breeder is going to come in and drop off, and then I'm going to get some sales, and then we'll get the money to you. Just sit and wait. There were literally lineups of people asking for help because money matters. Like we've heard here today, money matters. If NORML has no money, they got nothing except the spirit of the people, but that's nothing against the government. The government has your money, and they're using it against you. So Mark knew that money was necessary, but the government also knew. Mark was arrested so many times in Canada by Canadian police, shut down, chased out of town. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, everybody covered him. 60 Minutes. No, CNN came up in '97. They called him the Prince of Pot, and they covered the story about this marijuana seed seller who was trying to fight a revolution, wearing a hemp suit, trying to be a businessman, running for office, running for the Marijuana Party of Canada. He funded the U.S. Marijuana Party. I mean, again, there's so many different groups, I can't even think of them all. But when Mark was fighting for this, it was about not creating a bunch of followers, and he is a big ego. Mark Emery is a big personality, and people hate you when you're a big personality. You get detractors, that's just what happens, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care what you think. He doesn't, because he knows what's right, and he's been fighting for justice and liberty by using the dollar for all that time. And again, the point of making the money was never for a personal fortune, because you guys know, the federal government of America, if they want your money, they will find it. They will pinch you, they'll dig it up if you've got anything hidden away anywhere. Mark had no car, nothing, no house. He rented, he gave up his leased car. He had absolutely nothing, and in the court they said, yeah, we traced millions of dollars, and they went all throughout the United States to political groups and ballot initiatives, and Nevada, Colorado got $15,000 for their medical marijuana. Arizona, Alaska, I think, had a balance to it. Quite a few of them that didn't even pass. But again, the point was he gave away so much money, it wasn't meant to be kept track of. It was just take this, try and make something happen. And I cited this one example, a few of you here, that I just recently got a message from somebody saying that they're actually working on the real legislation in Florida right now. Like they're involved, they're there working with the government. And they said, it started so long ago when I wanted to have a rally, and I emailed Mark Emery and said, can you give me some help? I want to hold a rally. And Mark sent down a couple magazines to give away. I think he sent like $50. It was such a small amount. It was just a little bit, right? Just a little something. And this guy said that changed everything for him. And he went from that little $50 and a couple magazines to helping write legislation to save lives. Mark doesn't know about that. Mark can't take credit for that. He had nothing to do with that, really, except for the little inspiration. So Mark always knew that the point was to inspire people and to get them to become leaders themselves, but you can't do anything without money. And that is why the U.S. government targeted him. But they also targeted him because he represented something more than just marijuana movement. I wish I had the press release for you from the DEA, but it said on the day of his arrest, today's arrest of Mark Scott Emery of Vancouver, BC is a significant blow to the marijuana legalization movement. Emery's business has been known to generate hundreds of thousands of illicit proceeds that have been funneled to the legalization groups active in the United States and Canada. His marijuana trafficking empire has been shut down. Drug legalization lobbyists now have one less pot of money to rely on. Those were their words. They never mentioned seeds. They never mentioned anything else. He never sold weed. He put seeds through the mail, and everybody knew it. And there's a lot of people sending seeds through the mail. It doesn't really matter. But Mark was targeted because he represented something more. He represented the idea of questioning authority and making sure government gets out of your personal life. because Mark doesn't really believe in government at all. Really, he's libertarian-ish, you know. I gotta say, Ron Paul opened my mind in so many ways. Say what you think about him, but for me, the idea of liberty is really at the core of this whole fight. But it's more than that, it's our culture. And when we say there's culture wars, there is a war on the marijuana culture. We have a historical culture that goes back hundreds of thousands of years. What is a culture? You know, a culture has symbols. We have symbols, the leaf, 420, even Bob Marley's face. If you're anywhere in the world and you want to find your people, you're going to go find those Rasta colors and a Bob Marley flag. It's true, right? We have our icons. We have our images. We have our rituals. Cultures have rituals. We've got rituals. We all have a process where we roll up the joint, or we put it in the bong, or we have our special piece. And part of the ritual is to always share it. We're always sharing. You always pass the joint. It doesn't matter who's beside you. It doesn't matter who they are. Unless, of course, you think they're a narc, then be smart. But you know, like... But when it comes to the marijuana, people in our culture, the culture is about sharing, it's about compassion, it's about listening. And sure, there are people who are thuggy and tough and rap gangsters, and they smoke pot too, and you got like cowboys who smoke pot, and you got rock and roller, long-haired 80s bands, you know, they smoke pot. Everybody smokes pot. There's no group that doesn't smoke pot. Think about classical musicians, jazz musicians. The only group that doesn't smoke pot are probably like the prohibitionist pot-hating bands, and I don't know where they're performing at the DARE convention of 10 people. So really, the culture, our culture, speaking of music, we've got music. We have music. We have music by people who are straight up about marijuana, but you also have songs by ordinary musicians from way back when, even in the jazz era, they're singing about pot. We've got art. We've got so much art. I mean, come on, Canada's people produce so much art. We have movies, we have language, we have dialogue, we have a history of a cultural use that goes back so long. We can find engravings and old ancient texts. We've got medicinal history. Culture, that's what that represents. What does the government want to do? What do our prohibition suppressors want to do? They don't just want to put you in prison, because, you know, that's easy. They want to stop our ideas. Marijuana is a threat to government because it opens your mind. And that's why there's this interesting push towards, oh, well, marijuana for children that doesn't have THC, why doesn't everybody just use marijuana with no THC? Well, the government likes that idea because THC and getting high has always been associated with the 60s, which has always been associated with anti-war, anti-establishment, anti-government, freedom, peace, and love, and tolerance. That's not what government is about. So for them, the threat isn't that you're getting high. They don't care if it's making you sick or healthy. They really don't. They care that you're going to start questioning authority like I did. If you heard me speak earlier, I went from anti-drug, establishment type. I loved uniforms. Oh man, cops, I loved it. Like, it was like, oh man, you guys look so cool, and you're like uniforms marching together. But then I realized what that represents, and it turns my stomach now because, you know, but I have to make a note there. This is a side note I often bring up. People sometimes wonder, why can't we get it together? Why can't we all just group together? I mean, our numbers are bigger than our enemy. Why can't we all just get along and do it together? The answer is because of who we are, because we're free thinkers. What makes us different from the people who take marching orders from the church or the government or whatever group, they don't question authority. Their leader says go, they will go. The pop people, the left-wingers, the whatever you want to say, the free thinkers, you guys, we can't all go along with the same plan because that is actually the opposite of our nature. What makes us different from those people is that we all are free thinkers. We have different ideas. We have different tactics and approaches and strategies. It's just important to remember that when you agree with somebody, like you're talking about the bumper stickers on the car, like you go, yeah, I agree with that and that, so I'm going to work with you on those. I don't really agree with that idea, but you know what? It doesn't matter. I don't hate you for it, you know? I'm surprised by how many people retweet some of my tweets, and then I go to their page, and they think I'm a conservative, and because they're going off on all this pro-oil and pro-war, but because I tweeted something about big government, they think I'm one of them, right? So the point being, you can find people, you don't have to get along with everybody. I know that, oh, I shouldn't have said that, right? I shouldn't say, oh, you know, because we're all supposed to get along, right? But here's the thing. We're human beings. We don't get along. Environmentalists don't all get along. The black rights movements doesn't all get along. And the women's right to vote, everything, every group, every organization, every cause has division, every family. Even take 3 kids who are best friends, they're not all going to get along all the time. Even if they all love strawberry ice cream and, you know, whatever kids shows are popular these days. Hannah Montana, is that still around? Or no? Okay. No. Or is she trouble? She's trouble now, right? But the point being that... the point is that when you can get along with people, you can work with them. You can sit with the Republicans and talk about legalizing. I can sit with my husband's prosecutor. He agreed to come to Vancouver and sit beside me and say legalize it. Because we're willing to agree on that. We don't need to talk about what we don't agree with. But if you can't get along with someone, and they like pot and you like pot, but you just can't get along, don't go through the grief. There's a billion other pot activists you can work with, and they can work with theirs. And what's very valuable about this, you guys, that it's a lot harder for the government to take you down when you're a bunch of small cells. If you're one big group, if you're all together, and they take you down, then you're gone. And that's what the DEA thought when they took Mark down. That's why they said in the press release, the marijuana movement suffered a significant blow. They actually thought that they had stopped you guys. But no, they didn't, because you're all doing your own thing. You're doing your thing together at times, and you're doing things separately at times. But when Mark used that money, it created a lot of questions in people's minds about, oh, capitalist, big money, he must have millions. I tell you, people still think me and Mark have billions of dollars buried. I get people telling others online they went to my giant mansion out on an island, and I'm like, really? Take me there. I want to go, I want to break. But it wasn't ever about that for Mark, but that blows the minds. In fact, the DEA interviewing his co-accused said, there has to be money. There's nobody ever who sells seeds or gets involved in this industry who gives it all away. But like I said, they investigated and they found $11 in his bank account, and there's nothing else. And he paid income tax on his seed sales. So Revenue Canada would sit down with him and be like, how many seeds do you sell this year? And he goes, oh, about this much. And he goes, okay, so you want to pay this much? And he goes, all right, I'll do that. And then they go, do you think you could sell some more seeds and then you could pay us some more money? I'm not kidding. Health Canada even took his seeds to start the medical marijuana program. Everybody knew what he was doing. It was no big deal. That's why the U.S. government coming onto Canadian soil, having him face life in U.S. prison in a country he never went to, Canadians were pissed. But that was way back in 2005, and now we've got all these, our borders doesn't, it's strange, our border doesn't exist in so many ways, but it's gotten so much worse in so many ways with the enforcement and the strengthening, the tough, even Canadian border guards are total jerks when I come home. Like, why do you have to be so mean? I love when I'm going to America, it says, we are the face of America. In Vancouver Airport, I'm in the U.S., because you actually have to go through security there in the Vancouver Airport, and then you're on the other side of the gate, and it says, welcome to America. And you're like, wow, I'm still in Vancouver, though. But even those guys, it's like, they're scowling, they're mean. It's like, but you guys, come on, you're spying on all of us equally. We're all in the same war machine. We got the same private prisons and the same oil companies. It's all the same thing. But I want to go back quickly to the American people and how they've made the big difference. Because back in 2000, 2001, 2003, Canada was moving forward. I'm sure you guys must remember those days. I don't know what it looked like from the US, but there was a time when Canada was thinking about decrim. Our Prime Minister said he would have a joint in one hand and a fine in the other. Because, you know, do you remember that? I don't know if that was something you guys were picking up on the radar, or else maybe we're just the big empty north. But there was a lot going on, but we couldn't because the US said no. And our government would always say, we can't legalize it because America won't let us. And in fact, in 2002, John Walters, your drug czar at the time, came up to Vancouver to a Board of Trade meeting, all police, all government business, and the outgoing and incoming mayor. There had just been an election. And the drug czar stands up there and says, oh, marijuana is dangerous. You guys legalize it. We're going to shut down your border, blah, blah, blah. Well, Mark Emery had bought a table at this exclusive event under someone else's name. This is an infamous event. About 8 or 10 of them sat at this table, and every time John Walters said, marijuana is a gateway drug, Mark and everyone else would say, lies, lies, BS, you know, fully the word though. And they would call him out, and he was furious, and there's video of this, it was covered by national media, and John Walters is up there going, I don't know who you are, I've never heard of you, and he was pissed, and then he went and found out who Mark was, and then he went and told the Vancouver police, because they came down to the store, John Walters came into our location, and he told them, shut this guy down. He humiliated me. Because right after that meeting, both mayors were interviewed, and they said, yeah, the drug czar is kind of nuts. the mayor said, that's ridiculous. Like, this is, why are we being told this by this guy? It's outrageous. So that's how it all began, is that the Vancouver police investigated Mark at the request of the US government, but then the BC Crown, the prosecutor, refused to lay the charges because Canadians knew who Mark was. It was insane. $200 fine was the last punishment. So when the US got the file, or technically we have admission, the file was given to the US by the Vancouver police, which is really offensive as a Canadian, just, or an American maybe, that you go into another country and take someone they weren't even here. So Mark facing life in prison because he humiliated the drug czar. But in that time, since then, things have shifted radically. In 2006, Canada elected the Stephen Harper Conservative government. George W. Bush, stone cold evil type government. And I've said this a few times to a couple people here, but I don't know if you want to try and learn a little bit more about what's going on in Canada, but we have a dictatorship government right now. Majority power equals total control. The opposition parties at this point, since 2011, the last election, which was found to be stolen with election fraud, but doesn't matter. The Conservative government has total power. The opposition parties cannot stop anything. But in the years prior, when the Conservatives in 2007 said we're declaring a culture war on cannabis, there was a new anti-marijuana movement, the US started shifting in the good direction. Canada started going backwards because we were just copying 10-year-old mistakes of America. Harper wanted so much to be like George W. Bush. Really, truly, best buddies, the two of them. And it's so disappointing because Mark never even went to the United States. And he's sitting in a Mississippi federal prison right at this minute. And Canada has fallen so far into a dark, dark place. It really does make me cry reading the papers. It's not even about pot. It's about everything else they're doing. We have a really bad, bad situation. I cry for my country, but then I get hope from Americans. I really do. Our whole movement up at home. You guys are giving us hope because finally they can't say America won't let us legalize it.
Yeah.
Because it's happening. Because it's happening across the border. You guys are going to save Canada. And I said this a couple times in other speeches at Seattle Hemp Fest and stuff, but I said, the drug war and marijuana prohibition can't end anywhere else except America first. Because that's where it started. That's where the drug war started. This is where the tumor is. This is where the cancer is growing out and spreading around the world and causing so much suffering and death into the far reaches of Afghanistan where families are dying because their crops are being destroyed. I mean, there's so much harm, but it comes from the tumor of the drug war in the center of America. And it's funny how Colorado actually, isn't that right in the center of America? And Mark started selling seeds 20 years ago to Americans, and he said, take the seeds, give me the money, I will give it back to you, and help plant the seeds of freedom to overgrow the government.
Yeah.
And the seeds of freedom are not just the seeds in the ground that free your body from pain, or free you from having to visit a dealer, or free you from supporting cartels. Those seeds are also the seeds in your mind, the seeds, the ideas of freedom that people are planting and sharing, and it's going so far in so many places. And Mark, the mission is accomplished. We're not there yet. We can't yet reap our harvest and enjoy the big pot party. Not yet, because there's still so much work to do. But when Mark set out 20 years ago, there wasn't even medical marijuana in California. There was nothing going on. Canada had no medical marijuana. We had nothing. But with those seeds being sent to Canadians and Americans and people all over the world, by the way, all over every nation on this planet got seeds, even the crazy ones you wouldn't believe. Yeah. But they went everywhere. And you guys took those seeds, you planted them, you became leaders yourselves, you inspired other leaders. The movement is not one candle flame that can be snuffed out, and it goes on. Even if you take that one flame and you light another candle, that first flame is no smaller. The second flame is no smaller. And those flames can both light up other candles, and each flame burns bright on its own, but from a source, but also as a source. And that's what inspiration and leadership and all of that is. And Mark didn't want followers, he wanted leaders. He wanted people to go and do their own thing, and they did, and you have. And now we're seeing so much reform. Like Canada has medical marijuana, but they just dismantled the program. Every single plant is illegal in Canada now. Every single plant, even for patients who have been able to grow since 2000. With Terry Parker case, there's all these cases, and the right to grow your own medicine has been fought for years by patients in Canada, and the courts kept saying the government isn't providing access, and the government kept saying, well, we don't want it, it's not medicine, and so people kept saying, and the courts kept saying, but you have to, there's suffering. We have something like your Constitution, we have rights. We have a it's not a Constitution, what is it? It's a Bill of Rights, I think. We have a few different documents, but the courts kept saying the government is not meeting the needs of the people, you have to. So the government just finally decided, okay, you want us to provide access? We're just going to get a bunch of companies to grow massive amounts of marijuana behind big secure walls and cameras, and they have to go through background checks. It's really quite a process. But there's your system, and now you don't have to grow because we're giving it to you. But the reason this was passed was because the Conservatives had the police constantly saying, we're raiding all these grows and they all have licenses. We go and find this grow and they have a license. And they hate it. They hate it. The government hates marijuana. They hate marijuana more than they hate any other group, and they hate a lot of them. But they hate marijuana. And they hate me because I actually occupied his office in Calgary and took over, and we went inside and rolled joints and waved the flag and got news attention. And Stephen Harper has a mug on his desk with the American federal government seal on it. That's where he puts his lips every day. It's true. I have video on the internet. You can go find it. But the Stephen Harper government hates marijuana, and this new program that they've introduced eliminates every plant across the country. Right at this moment, there are a few patients who have the right to keep growing under an injunction of a court challenge, blah, 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 blah. But we still have a lot of fighting, and now we have mandatory minimums for pot. Texas tried to warn Canada. Texas itself said to Canada like 2-3 years ago, because this bill was introduced so many times under minority government and the opposition parties could stop it, but now that we have majority government and the opposition parties can't stop anything the government wants to do, it's just straight dictatorial power by, like, seriously guys, look into this. Right now, the majority government of Canada is a fascist dictator who's dismantling our entire country, shutting down all the environmental services, shutting down all the national libraries, silencing every federal scientist. I could go on and on and on and on. And the military-industrial complex, and the prison expansion in Canada has been insane in the last few years. It's sickening and it's terrifying, and I'm watching this. And even America kept saying, in Texas again, specifically said, the right-on-crime groups, Newt Gingrich, so they're saying, Canada, we're repealing our mandatory minimums. It's really expensive and really stupid. Our government doesn't care. They don't care. They want to punish. They're punishment fetishists. And they also have friends in the industry. And those mandatory minimums have now become law, so that if you grow 6 plants, you automatically get 6 months in prison, even if you're on your one last dying breath. The judge has no choice. If you're renting your house, 9 months automatic minimum. You near children, that makes it a year. We are going to see tens of thousands, or maybe just thousands, because we're a small country, but we're going to see a lot of Canadians going behind bars. And what's even worse is that asset forfeiture has now become so popular, so there aren't even charges being laid. Regular, ordinary women growing a couple plants in their house are losing everything with no charges laid. That's insane. And it's happening in Canada, and it's getting worse. But that's why America offers us hope, and that's why it's so exciting that 20 years after Mark started, 20 years, you guys took the seeds, you planted, you're overgrowing, you're organizing, you're making it happen, and so that, he had to go away in a way. 2005, when the raid happened, that's when a shift happened. 2009 is when he agreed to a 5-year plea deal. In 2010 of May was when he formally got taken across the border. But in that time, it was kind of like, you know what? You want him, America? You want to take the Prince of Pot and put him in the belly of the beast and have him oversee and see it spring up around him? Let's take that DEA press release and just throw it in their faces and say, the significant blow? I think it's the DEA who suffered the significant blow. The mission is not yet finished. You must keep planting the seeds of freedom. You have to keep overgrowing the government. Growing being the key word, because we are not violent overthrowers. We will just overgrow, and Mark is very proud. The map showed on the day of his arrest with one of those federal agents with a little leaf in each state and arrows coming out of Vancouver, BC. So every state, the tentacles of the Emery Empire have reached into every state, they said. There's 3 people, one sending mail, one sitting at a desk, and Mark Emery on the internet. Like, that's your enterprise, right? But again, it's so heartening to see it's becoming a reality. 22 states with medical now. How many states with decrim? It was like 19, I thought. And now you've got legalization. I mean, things are happening in Canada now. Our government, they're still going to oppress us, trust me. But it's a lot harder for them at this point because, obviously, right south of Vancouver, 45 minutes from my home, next month I could go to one of 300 pot stores in Washington State that they're going to open on the month of Mark's release. And to know that Mark is going to come home to Canada completely scot-free. I'm very sorry, I'm running long, I know I am. But Mark is going to come home completely scot-free. He has no restrictions, no drug testing, no nothing, which is great, but your government approved him to be transferred home last year, but our government refused to transfer him home because they wanted to be jerks, even though they could have punished him more. But funnily enough, then your government wrote to Mark and said, sorry, we can't send you. Your government won't take you. It's like, then your government is sending him notices saying, you're here without a visa, you gotta go. It's like, please let me go. So Mark is just like waiting and waiting, and trust me, I promise, we are going to get our political revenge against our government. You bet. We are. Because their evil is no match for the power of the people, and they took my man. They made me a victim. And I never cried about it, and I was never sad about it. Well, I was on TV a few times crying, and the first week he was gone, I would curl up with his laundry and cry, and then it lost his smell, and so I had to wash the final load of laundry. But to be honest, guys, I haven't been emotional for years because I've had so much great support, and if I never received the little messages, the little hugs, and just even a handshake, I couldn't have been strong. And I know that through your strength you've given me, somehow I've been able to give that strength to others, just like the candle flame, because people have said to me that I've helped inspire them, and if they're going to help inspire others, it's kind of like an exercise I won't make us do, but if we all stood in a circle together, back to back like this, and then we all sat down, we'd all be sitting on each other's laps, so we're all holding each other up. It's a cute little exercise, and it just goes to show that, you're not sitting on that person's lap, and they're not sitting on yours, but you're helping hold it all together. So another analogy I'll just close up with is, as the movement grows and gets bigger and more progress happens, I know there's a lot of people out there who did a lot of work long ago who feel unrecognized, a lot of people who've done a lot of hard work who don't want recognition, a lot of people doing hard work who do want recognition, and a lot of people who aren't working hard and want recognition, but there's a lot of people, a lot of personalities, and a lot of stuff out there, but when you think of the path that we're on, no matter what you envision the future, because there's all forms of legalization and liberty, we all have different ideas, but when you think of just freedom in general, as Anne kept saying, freedom, 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 the path to freedom, you get to lay down a brick. You don't have to, you can sit on the sidelines and go chill in the park, but there's people laying down bricks. Those are activists, those are advocates, those are people getting involved, and you're on that path, and you may not see who laid down those bricks you're walking on. You didn't meet all those people who are laying down each step you take. And you know that your path forward, you're not going to meet all those people. You might meet some of them and help them lay bricks along the way. But a lot of people who laid down those bricks on that path, they're dead, they're gone, they're killed by the government, they're locked up away, they grew old and they died. Whatever happened, people come and go. But at least keep in mind that even if nobody knows that it was your name on that brick, 10, 20, even a year in the future, but 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years in the future, when there's still more and more people marching towards freedom, the endless battle, because we'll never win, because the enemy will always be against us. There's no victory line. It's just aim for freedom and take as much as you can get and keep asking for more. But when people keep walking that path, at least you know you laid down a brick. Maybe it was just one, maybe it was 1,000, but you helped lay down that path so other people in the future can keep on walking, heading towards freedom, planting those seeds of freedom and overgrowing the government. I'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you so much for having me here. and for your passion. You guys are in the heart of the evil. You guys are working the hardest. You suffer the most, and you fight back the most. Keep it up, please.